So I have a question for you. Do you think the Switch could end up being Nintendo's best-selling home console? I know there's been talk and controversy around if it's actually a home console or just a portable system. Nintendo treats it as a home console. It's, of course, a hybrid. So that's pretty much how everyone, analysts, everyone else is treating it. And they are currently comparing it to the Wii. So the question I have for you is, do you think the Switch will end up outselling the Wii system when it's all said and done? You compare the Switch family of systems to the Wii, and do you think the Switch will overcome that? So just make sure you have all the numbers in front of you. Here is the dedicated video game sales units and where we are currently. Now, of course, the Switch hardware count stops at the end of September. So what you're seeing here does not account for October, November, and December, which of course, that's Nintendo's biggest quarter. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as analysts have continued to kind of, I would say, turn around on the Switch. Originally, they weren't too sure about it. Then they kind of got pretty high on it and they dropped down. Now they're back to being like through the roof over this system. Again, family of systems, I guess we'll say, because there's the Switch Lite. So as of the end of September, Nintendo's reported that there was 41.67 million units. All right, that's pretty good, right? I would say this far into the, I mean, we're coming up, we'll be in March. It'll be finishing up the third year of the system being out, and we don't even know the full picture at that point. We're technically counting 2.5-ish years or so right now. Now, compared to the Wii, that was at 101.63 million units. So yes, the Switch still has some, ground to make up here to get there. However, the one interesting thing about the Wii that a lot of people forget is it was actually around for 7-ish years, just about, but it racked up all of those sales in a short period of time. About 4.5 years, it rolled up to 100 million units. It was selling like crazy. I mean, insane amounts of systems. So it makes you wonder if the way that the Wii kind of went out quietly, if it could have kept its momentum, where would it have ended up? See, because if we look at different charts, like VG Charts takes a lot of the data that's actually been shared out there. They'll make charts and show how a system's doing compared to a system previously. And I mean, if you look at it, it does show, okay, yeah, the Wii is tracking ahead of the Switch pretty well. But again, keep in mind, the Wii had this big boost, and then it kind of started to fall off, whereas the Switch seems to be a pretty straight line heading up, and it makes us wonder if the Switch will have more momentum in its back half of its life versus the Wii that, again, was a very, very rapidly selling system, but just fell off after a little while. So this leads us to today, where a lot of analysts are now saying that when it's all said and done, the Switch could have Wii-like numbers, and it seems like the biggest thing that is kind of pushing them over the edge is that the Switch was very, very popular once again, like it was last year on Black Friday, despite the sales, I'll say, not being amazing. Now, of course, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One had some pretty good deals. I mean, we had the Xbox One SAD, the S all digital, get down to like $150 with 3 games. We of course saw the PlayStation 4 bundle in 3 really good games for the Slim, and it was like $200. We've seen those systems get very, very cheap. I think even like last year, Spider-Man and the PlayStation 4 Slim with like a $50 gift card for like $200. So yeah, it's become, these systems have become very, very cheap. And the Switch is like right in between generations for those systems right now, I would say, because of course, as the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One wind down, there naturally would be more consumer spending that could go towards the Switch because it's like the system out there to get for the holidays, right? For Christmas. Okay, maybe you have kids who want something, right? They want a big present. They play a lot of video games, and well, they're not going to get a PlayStation or an Xbox because they have one or the other, or they have both. You probably buy a Switch, maybe even a couple of Switch Lites even. So we had several places cover this. Bloomberg did, CNN did. CNN's website is terrible, by the way. So in terms of its structure, there are some crazy amounts of stuff all over the place. They have those auto-playing ads. This is the whole thing, right? So Go Nintendo did a pretty good job writing it all up here, and I'll link to this if you want to read through it a bit more. But right now, analysts are predicting that hardware totals would be about 9.46 million units for this past quarter. The one we're in now, technically, but they'll report on it at the end of January, that being Nintendo. 9.46 million units is actually very similar to what they did last year. So there's a chance that it will be higher, mostly because while there is controversy around Pokemon still is selling tremendously well. And there is one other thing that's currently out there that will, I think, affect Switch sales this holiday. And we'll kind of come back to that. They'll say 64.73 million units of software in the quarter ending December. That actually is about right. They say it could climb 23% from last year. I tend to agree with that again because, again, Pokemon, right? Pokemon's going to really push sales. Although last year we had Smash to finish up December, and that was an insane amount of sales, but I think Pokemon is going to outsell Smash overall right away when we hear about those numbers. They'd already said that it outsold it like as a launch, and I think it'll continue going forward. Now, of course, Pokemon is technically 2 games, and that's a whole thing as it is. I get the argument there, but it's selling tremendously well, and they say many analysts expect the Switch will last long enough to reach the 100 million record set by the Wii. We're going to come back to that as well because that is a big question mark when it comes to how long they can make the Switch last, as well as, of course, going up against the next-gen systems from Sony and Microsoft, which I think is less of a factor than people are selling it to be. Okay, I think the Switch can compete with those systems, believe it or not, even when they are out. And then analysts are saying 19.07 million units of hardware and 147.43 million units of software for the fiscal year. And if you remember, they had to kind of tone it down a little bit last fiscal year, but I think it's going to be a little higher than 9.5 million units of Switch hardware. I think it might actually eclipse 10 million for the quarter, and that is insanity if you really think about it, mostly because I'm seeing what's happening in Japan with the Famitsu sales charts, and I've been, we track them from time to time going forward, and I'll look at them every week, but it does look like that kind of correlates to the rest of the world as well, right? Like we'll see high amounts of sales in Japan, and generally that also means in North America and other places that sales are also up, because a lot of times it has to do with some sort of release, for example, or even a promotion maybe, or just some sort of advertising and hype going on. It does tend to pretty much carry over to other places. And then there were a bunch of quotes, again, from different analysts, people in the market, just kind of talking about it. Like, for example, this is typically where the sales begin to peak out, but it looks like the Switch may have a longer life cycle with a desktop console and a portable player in a single machine. Nintendo is a very effective platform for selling game software. So the biggest reason I think the Switch could eclipse the Wii numbers, and I'm actually kind of leaning towards it doing so, basically getting over 100 million units, which would be only Nintendo's second home console to do that. The Wii is like the only one that's done it at this point, right? Whereas if you look at Sony, they've had several. They have 3 of the 4, and Microsoft is still looking to try to crack that mark, and I don't think they ever will at this point because they are looking more at software and services rather than just a home console. So the biggest thing here is that the Wii did get a price drop eventually, but it took longer than the Switch. The Switch has a separate system completely that will be counted, by the way, as just a Switch system in sales, right? They'll divide it up in some hardware sheets, but for the most part, the Switch Lite will just be counted as a Switch when they report it to investors. That is already out at $200. The Wii dropped its price just before the 3-year mark. It was September of 2009, so like 2 months or so before that 3-year mark, whereas Nintendo managed to do it, five or so months, and that doesn't sound like a lot of time. However, it is right in time for the holidays, and it makes a lot of sense for them to do that, and different variations and a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to the Switch being more of a family of systems rather than just one system. And that's the other big thing here, is extending the life of the Switch appears to be easier for Nintendo, and I think analysts are starting to realize that the Switch isn't necessarily a system, but just a brand that's going to be an umbrella for a bunch of systems that eventually come out, possibly making the brand overall a 6, 7, maybe even 8-year lifespan. It really comes down to what else they release going forward to kind of put in there with the current Switch systems. This is a good one too, because this talks about Pokemon. It's a Pokemon title, so unless you are giving up on the franchise, it's hard to imagine fans not buying it. Pokemon Sword and Shield will probably end up being the single largest game in terms of launch year revenue, probably bigger than Smash Bros. It technically already is after the launch, and I agree with this as well. The focus is in the game, not the console itself. 2021 might be an even bigger year for title launches. There is a new Zelda game, and it will be time for a mid-cycle refresh for all major Nintendo titles. That is correct as well. Some of these insights are actually very good. Like talking about things like a new Mario game, right? Like we saw the Wii, of course, have Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2. It probably will be about time for a new Mario game to come out, and Mario games like Mario Odyssey sell systems and sell software, but definitely move systems similar to what Pokemon and Zelda do. And of course, Nintendo is working to have Zelda be a yearly thing, and based on what Nintendo is trying to do with their install size, which is they're trying to battle the new system specifically with install size by convincing developers that it's worth developing a game specifically for their platform, because their install size, it would be the same or much more even than the PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox Scarlet combined, probably for, I would say, the first half of those systems' lifespan. And then my favorite quote is probably Michael Pachter. He didn't really add a lot to it, but this is what he said. The Switch can sell 20 million units annually for the next 3 years, so it should easily get to 100 million. I feel like they just called him on like a lunch break, and he was like, oh yeah, 20 million units per year, 100 million units. Put it up. Yeah, that's not a lot of insight from Pachter on that one, but all right, sure. It really is an interesting thought, because when the Switch was first coming out, a lot of people were unsure at the ability for it to succeed in the marketplace. And I think a lot of that has to do with Nintendo and, of course, the Wii U failing, for the most part, to capture any real audience or even explain to the market what it was there for. But as Reggie himself said, it was kind of needed or necessary so that the Switch could exist. And even Nintendo, Reggie at this point himself, called it a fail forward, because with the Wii U's failure, the Switch was pretty much born. So there you go. It's interesting to see the turnaround from when the Switch was first announced and it releasing to now, where analysts are thinking this could end up being Nintendo's best-selling home console. But let me know your predictions down below if the Switch can outsell the Wii, and do we need another big game outside of what we have here to get there by the end of its life? So do we need another Mario game as an example? Do we need to fit another mainline Pokemon game on here, which I think we will? Do we need 2 mainline Pokemon games on here to finish beyond 100 million units? Let me know, guys, down below, because this is an interesting conversation, and we can revisit some of the comments years from now to see who was right and even who was wrong at that point. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure to like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it. Dislike it if not. And I'll see you guys next time.